You tell yourself you have high standards, that you know what you want, that you're not settling, that the right person just hasn't come along yet. And every time someone new appears, you find the reason. Too loud, too quiet, not ambitious enough, too career-focused, texts too much, not attentive enough, and they're gone before they ever got close. Here's what I need to say to you directly. Your standards are not the problem. Your standards are the strategy. And the strategy is working perfectly, just not in the way you think. Stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you is one of the most uncomfortable truths in modern dating. And I know it's uncomfortable because I lived it myself, not because you're broken, but because you built something that felt like protection and called it self-respect. Let me tell you about a man I'll call Alex. Smart, successful, disciplined, worked out every morning, built a business from nothing, read constantly, had genuine depth, by every measure, the kind of man a woman would want. And he had been single for 4 years, not because nobody was interested. Women were interested. But within 2, maybe 3 weeks, he was always done. She laughed too loud at her own jokes. She didn't read enough. She wasn't ambitious in the right way. There was something off. I can't explain it. He came to me convinced that his problem was the dating market. I looked at him for a moment, then I asked him something nobody had ever asked him before. When was the last time someone actually got close enough to disappoint you? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was the answer. Nobody had ever gotten that close because he'd never let them. And Alex is not alone. Let me tell you about another man. I'll call him Marco. Different from Alex in almost every way. Not a businessman, a musician, a creator, deeply emotional, highly perceptive. He had been through a serious relationship at 26 that ended in a way that changed him. She knew him completely, his fears, his insecurities, the parts of him he'd never shown anyone else. And she left anyway. After that, Marco built something different than Alex, not a checklist of external qualities, a checklist of emotional red flags. She got too attached too fast, red flag. She needed too much reassurance, red flag. She was too open about her past, red flag. Every woman who showed genuine vulnerability was disqualified immediately. Not because she was wrong for him, because vulnerability reminded him of what he had been when he got hurt. Alex used standards to filter out the world. Marco used standards to filter out intimacy itself. Different men, different wounds, same fortress. And here's the question both of them never asked themselves. What is the checklist actually protecting? Here's what most men in this position will never admit, and what I'm going to ask you to sit with for the next 10 minutes. The checklist isn't about finding the right person. The checklist is about making sure nobody gets close enough to see the real you. Think about that. Every standard you add, every new criterion, every additional requirement is another brick in a wall that keeps people at exactly the distance where they can admire you, but never truly know you. And being admired from a distance is safe. Being known up close, that is the most terrifying thing a human being can experience. Because being known means being seen. And being seen means someone could see what you're most afraid is there. The part of you that isn't enough. The part of you that isn't as confident as you appear. The part of you that has been hurt before and promised itself, never again. Your high standards didn't come from nowhere. They were built in the exact shape of your oldest wound. Let me show you how this works in practice, because this isn't theory. This is something that happens in a very specific, recognizable pattern. You meet someone. First impression, good, maybe even great. There's something there. You can feel it, and that feeling, that's when the search begins, not for connection, for the exit. You start observing more carefully, listening for the wrong word, watching for the small inconsistency. And you find it. You always find it, because nobody is perfect. Nobody. And the moment you find it, you feel something that might surprise you. Relief. Not disappointment. Relief. Because now you have the reason, the justification, the exit strategy that lets you walk away without ever having to be vulnerable, without ever having to let someone see what's underneath the surface, without ever having to risk being truly rejected by someone who actually knows you. This is what psychologists call avoidant attachment behavior. And here's the uncomfortable fact. It is one of the most common patterns among high-achieving, intelligent, self-aware men. The more capable you are of building a life, the more capable you are of building a fortress and calling it a home. Here's what I want you to understand about the difference between real standards and defensive standards. Real standards protect your values. They exist to find someone who is genuinely compatible, who shares your direction, your ethics, your capacity for growth. Defensive standards protect your ego. They exist to filter out everyone before they can get close enough to filter you. One is discernment, one is fear in disguise. And the difference between them is not in the standard itself, it's in the feeling when you find the flaw. Real discernment feels like clarity. Defensive filtering feels like relief. Do you feel relief when you find a reason to leave? Or do you feel loss? That question is the most honest diagnostic you will ever run on yourself. Stop for a second. I want you to think about the last person you let go. Not a bad relationship, not someone clearly wrong for you. The last person who had something real, where there was genuine potential, and you found the reason. Remember the exact moment you identified the flaw. Now, ask yourself honestly, how did you feel? Did you feel the sadness of losing something that could have been? Or did you feel the quiet exhale of someone who just stepped back from the edge? If it was the second, that exhale is not self-respect. That exhale is avoidance wearing self-respect's clothes. And once you feel the difference, you can't unfeel it. Here's the part nobody wants to hear. The person who met every single standard on your list would terrify you. Not because they're perfect, but because you'd have no excuse, no exit strategy, no justifiable reason to keep the distance. You'd have to show up, fully, without the armor, without the performance, without the version of yourself you've curated for people who never get too close. And that is scarier than being alone. Because being alone is predictable. Being truly known is the most unpredictable thing that can happen to a human being. You don't know what they'll do with what they see. You don't know if they'll stay. You don't know if the real you, the one underneath the discipline and the achievements and the carefully maintained image, is someone worth staying for. That uncertainty is what the checklist was built to avoid. Here's a fact that changes everything when you understand it. Intimacy is not built on compatibility. Compatibility is the baseline. Intimacy is built through rupture and repair. Through moments when things go wrong, when someone sees you at your worst, when you disappoint each other, when the image breaks, and you choose to stay anyway. That choice, that deliberate, vulnerable choice to stay when leaving would be easier, is where real connection lives. But you can only get there by allowing someone past the first 3 weeks, by sitting with discomfort instead of cataloging it as a deal breaker. By asking yourself, is this a genuine incompatibility, or is this just the moment where I would normally run? Here's the thing most men in this position have in common. They don't struggle with discipline. They don't struggle with ambition. They don't struggle with self-improvement. They struggle with self-exposure. The idea that someone could see them, fully, completely without the filter, and walk away. So they make sure nobody ever gets that close, and they build an entire identity around the belief that this is strength. But here is the real definition of strength that nobody in the self-improvement space is willing to say. The bravest thing a man can do is not to build a better version of himself. The bravest thing a man can do is to let someone see the version he's still working on. Not the finished product, the construction site. That takes more courage than any gym session, any business built, any goal achieved. Because failure in those areas is recoverable. Rejection by someone who actually knew you, that feels like it touches something permanent, and it does. But so does never being known at all. Let me bring this to something practical, because this is not about lowering your standards. It's about examining them honestly. The next time you find the flaw, the thing that makes you pull back, before you use it as the exit, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this actually incompatible with my values, Or is it just unfamiliar? New people feel strange. Different communication styles feel wrong until they feel right. Someone who challenges you will always feel uncomfortable at first. Discomfort is not incompatibility. It's just newness. And newness, if you stay long enough, becomes depth. Second, think about the last person you walked away from, the exact moment you found the reason. Sit in that memory for a second. How did it feel? The exhale, the relief, the return to safety. Now ask yourself, what did you actually lose in that moment? Not what you avoided, what you lost. Because there was something real there. Before the exit, before the reason. And you chose the exit over the risk of finding out what was on the other side. Third, am I building a life or building a fortress and calling it a life? Because a fortress keeps everything out. The pain, yes, but also the warmth, the surprise, the specific, irreplaceable feeling of being chosen by someone who actually knows you, not the curated you, the real one. Here's the final truth. You are not too picky. You are not protecting yourself. You are protecting an image of yourself from the one person who could actually see through it. And that person, whoever they are, deserves the chance. Not because they're perfect, because you're not. And the only way to be truly loved is to be truly known. Not the disciplined version, not the successful version, not the version you've spent years building for a world that judges you on what it can see. The real one, the one that isn't finished yet, the one that is still uncertain and still becoming, the one that wakes up some mornings unsure of itself, the one that has been hurt before and is trying to figure out how to trust again. That version is the only one capable of genuine intimacy. And genuine intimacy is the only thing that will ever fill what the checklist was built to protect you from feeling. Alex called me 6 months after that first conversation. He told me he'd met someone. Nothing extraordinary about her by his old list. She read different books than him. She laughed too loudly sometimes. She was emotional in ways he used to categorize as weakness. But she was real. And for the first time, he decided to stay past the moment he would usually leave. Not because she was perfect, because he was finally tired of being safe. I don't know if this will work, he said, but for the first time in 4 years, I'm actually in it. That's not a love story. That's a man who finally put down the checklist long enough to let someone hold his hand. That's everything. Write "seen" in the comments if this reached something real in you. Just that word, seen. Because that's what this entire video's about, not lowering your standards, having the courage to be seen by someone worth seeing you. Share this with a man who keeps finding reasons to leave before anyone gets close. Because some men are one honest moment away from everything changing. See you in the next one.